The show today is going without notes, without assistance, no preparation, only a straightforward conversation between two mediators. We want to show the viewers what an amazing process mediation is, and that unscripted, we hope to prove mediators are in sync as to what will help support the family without ever having to see a lawyer. What we will accomplish, catch a little glitch, what we will accomplish is some rock-solid information delivered with confidence that will help any family in transition choose mediation over going to court. And I have with me to this conversation Don DeRoches, who's a divorce mediator and a bunch of other things, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's very nice of you to do that.
CDFA and all that.
Let's see.
Sure.
Let's see
where we go.
Let's go with defining in your eyes what you think mediation is.
Well, mediation is obviously a way to come to a resolution on separation and divorce issues, which is more supportive of the family instead of one individual and just representing one individual. So it's able to come to common areas of where, as a foundation, you want to try and get agreement at a foundation level, and then you could just build on that. And that's what we do. We keep building on what we have, what they have agreed to.
The only thing I might add to what you said is that I consider it to be a self-determination process, unimpeded by any authority outside of our brain in usage and conversation. So we can formulate our own design with our family rather than have somebody step on any design that we may have had, any preconceived notion or any reality that our family may have had. It steps on it, stops it from going forward like that.
That's
so,
true. And and I think we're also very, we're problem solvers, right? We're creative problem solvers. We're not looking to follow procedure, court procedure. We're looking to solve problems.
And you know, problems come in a lot of different forms. And what a court might perceive as a problem may not be what a family may perceive as a problem.
That's true.
Therefore, I think that a family sometimes brings its own unique problems, as you said.
Yeah.
And a court can't manage all that. It's not set up to manage what that family really wants and needs to have in their life going forward, right?
There's absolutely, I definitely agree. And there's no way for, if you get to a trial, there's really no way to try to come up with creative solutions, right? It's like, it's basically, what the judge has to do is kind of rely on case law from the past. And they have to basically go by the case law and by what the discussions have been, what the arguments have been between the two attorneys or between the two parties. I think what's different about mediators, and you know this as well as I do, is that we're presented with problems and situations that is different from every couple that we see.
Right.
And what we can do is we could listen to their story, listen to both sides, listen and understand what it is that they each want and what their goals are, and then we can come up with creative solutions that may be a win-win, may be a compromise. We don't know.
That's the self-determination thing about what adds the creativity to come into a resolution phase, because when you want something to happen and you're looking for something to happen, you're not really a good mediator anymore. So what you need to do is not say very much until the family and the people that you're talking to, whoever they may be, get clear about what they really want. Then it becomes easier for us, am I right? You know, it becomes easier to determine.
I absolutely do agree with that, and I think that we have to also throw ideas out to them, because a lot of the times I find, I don't know how you find, but I find a lot of couples that come to us don't necessarily know what their options are. So I think it helps, like with each situation, you know, the more cases that we have, the more options we might have for them.
That's
and
right.
we might say like, oh, well, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, and just throw out a lot of different things.
It's
and then
limitless, isn't it?
It's limitless, yes.
Yeah.
And we could create new things out of old things.
What's the weirdest thing you ever did? To give the audience an example, I'll say one thing.
Well, I wouldn't say it's weird, but I would say that it was something that actually really worked for the guy. So we had a couple that he had his body turned, so he was like this the whole time. And she was over there, and he was just facing away. His body language was like this, and you could see him rolling his eyes and everything. And we kind of stepped up and we said, well, what's wrong? Like, Tim, what's wrong? I built this house. Sandy took that house down, and I built this house myself, and now she's going to get it because I can't afford to buy her out. Simple solution. He was worried that she was going to sell the house after the divorce, like a year after the divorce. She was just going to sell.
Notion,
he had this assumption in his head that this is what she was going to do. So we said, listen, how about we write in the agreement that she can't sell it for 5 years. This way it gives you a chance to financially maybe recover. And then in 5 years, if she sells it, you have the first right of refusal over anybody else to buy the property. He turned his body, and he was back in the discussion again.
Right, yeah. What's nice about that story is that there was twofold possibilities there. Most people who go to court don't recognize that you can make a decision that may not occur in that time frame that you're having a divorce. They want to make courts generally want the equitable distribution to start immediately. They want to divide everything in half so it becomes easier for them to facilitate. You know that, right?
That is true.
So in my world as a mediator, and I'm sure you can agree with me on this, we can forecast how things will look with the couple. A guy could say, I'm going to be out of the country for this particular year, on this particular project, and I don't want this application of law, whatever it might be, or this application of the family to take place until that year is up.
Yeah, well, that's actually a really good point, because I feel like as mediators we have a huge advantage over the courts.
I can't understand
because we can look at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and basically say, well, you know what, this will work for now. But why don't we think about what will happen in 5 years? Maybe the kids are out of the house, and you could do this thing, and you could do that, and we could come up with a lot of flexible examples.
And although I'm hearing that you want me to do such and such with this particular asset, we want you to know that you don't have to make that decision now. Those kinds of conversations that mediators have, which attorneys don't have that same opportunity.
I think also people, just to add to that, is that people are kind of like they're unsure of that. So when they come, what I mean by that is when they come in, they're like, really, we could do that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. This is mediation.
Yeah.
Like, you can do, as long as we identify each of the items and we handle all of the different things that we have to handle, we could be flexible. We could do things that other people don't do.
It's so important for the viewers to see and hear this conversation we're having now, because you don't really have an opportunity to look up on the board, the bulletin board at the office, to see where you can go to manage your divorce. It just doesn't happen. There's a legal advertisement of some kind somewhere. There always is, since they've been allowed to advertise. And mediators, especially in our state of New York, aren't so welcome here.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how many times you have heard this, but I hear a number of times, oh my God, you're going to a mediator? You have kids. You have small children. You're going to a mediator? I mean, yes, that's the best place to go.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, you know this as well as I do. It's like most of the states are sole custody and visitation schedule. Like, that's when you go to court, that's what it is. It's sole custody and visitation. Right? That's the two.
In other states?
No, I'm saying like in most states.
You have
sole custody and visitation.
Or you have
but
joint custody.
But us as mediators, we know, I mean, I don't know how you operate, but we basically operate from a perspective of when are you going to have the children parenting time, and when are you going to have the children parenting time. We don't say sole custody. And when people come in and start talking that language, I said, oh, you've been talking to a lawyer. Oh, you've been talking to somebody who went through divorce.
And because we live in a state that's not mediation friendly, there isn't a joint custody law in place here in New York.
No, there isn't, and that's the problem.
But some 30 or 28 states, I forget how many there are, already have mediation as their first choice. You have to more or less go to a mediator before you go to a lawyer. So that would be the wisest thing to do for everyone.
Absolutely.
By the way, they all do that very successfully. And the important part we should add to this is that the relitigation rate is very low in states where mediation is the first approach.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you get
Right?
you get a chance. It makes sense to us because we know our business.
Right.
And a lot of people say, "Oh, you're a mediator. You're just spouting mediation business." I've heard this once or twice, not too often, thank God. But, you know, you're spouting mediation language. You're in business as a mediator. Why wouldn't you say good things about mediation?
Right.
Why would you? Aren't you not saying bad things about the legal system? So.
Hey, well, you know, there's situations also, and we've told people this as well. We've got situations where sometimes the person comes in and they can't make a decision. Like no matter what, and this is not often, I have to say this is like maybe 3% of our cases, where one party comes in and just cannot make a decision. And in that situation, you know what, having a lawyer or having an advocate, even if the advocate is your father or your mother or your brother or your sister or your son or daughter, right? You know what I mean?
That's another important. I wasn't thinking it in terms of just that one person not being able to make a decision, but I know people work at different levels. The first session is sometimes slow, and sometimes volatile because sometimes they just get frustrated that we're not telling them what to do, which we're not going to do.
Right.
We're not going to tell them what to do.
Yeah. Well, that's true, and some people do open up after the first session or so, but I'm talking about people who just cannot make a decision on their own. They've been kind of like their spouse is a really controlling person, and they got together because of this reason, because one just needed somebody to kind of drive them around and tell them what to do.
When I'm in trouble like that, which doesn't happen too often, but when I'm in trouble like that and I don't know what to do, I'll give them, may I step into the conversation? I ask permission to step into the conversation, just in case one person's not working. So I'll suggest, is it possible that you might want to entertain some of the examples that I could give you that have already passed through my experience and that I could offer you if you want to choose that as a possibility.
Right.
And that works. Because they usually say, okay, what have you got? They want to hear. If they're stalled, they want to hear from you. And we can't do all that much in terms of what to say. Not that we couldn't, but we
usually where I find that, and again, it's like it's 3% of the cases, it's like hardly, you know, there are people who kind of come along the way, but then there's this person who doesn't, like from a financial perspective, let's just say, they just don't know if it's the right decision. Right? You can throw things out. You could say, well, you know, how about $1,500 a month? How about $2,000 a month? They don't know what the right number is for them. They don't know what the right number is. Like, and in their head, they're like, well, I can't. Now, you know, sometimes I approach it from a budgeting perspective. Well, here's your cost. This is how much money you'll have left over. And they kind of go back and they say, well, what does the law say? You know, what should I get?
Yeah, I know.
And then we do the calculation and we say, well, I still don't know if that's the right number. You know, it's like, well, when are you going to know?
What I say is that you have to come up. I tell them that they should have a budgetary idea, some drawn complex idea of what they usually spend, so I have something to fall back on to help you through a tougher time later on in the mediation.
Right.
So if I have it early on in the process, I can see this couple's going to struggle with blank.
Yep.
And not be struggling with the other thing. I've had people so concerned about how things are going to fall out, so worried about how they're going to fall out, yet as seeing so many mediation, I'm going, my God, this couple is really over suffering. They don't have to be concerned about this.
Right.
And then there's that pale, remote possibility that they've been experienced the legal system and they're intimidated, and even I might intimidate them, which you don't want to.
Maybe.
You don't want to have that happen.
Yeah, no, I mean there are situations where they kind of look at you and you're the professional, and you know they feel a little bit intimidated by that, maybe, but because you know things that they don't know.
Yeah.
Right, and they're trying to extract it out of you. But you know, just because our field is, I feel, more of like a mental health kind of field.
We're more concerned about the
well-being,
the families,
absolutely,
the entire family, not just what funds one person may have versus another to feed the system that wants that money. So we always make it less expensive than the legal system. That's the beauty of mediation, I think.
Sure.
It's always far less expensive, and it's also time oriented. You can make that decision. If you want to get divorced in a couple of weeks, we'll sit with you in a couple of weeks, and that's it. We'll send the papers through.
Right.
And then it's just the court in terms of when the judge will sign it off at the Supreme Court.
that part takes a while, but at least they're legally separated before that part, which I think is the most important part.
A couple of weird things that happened to me. One of them is that I actually negotiated a parenting arrangement for 2 dogs.
Great.
Wasn't that fabulous?
Yeah, I love that.
I mean, we actually have to put in the schedule when they're going to see these dogs, and not only when are we going to see them, how they will be taken care of.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have children, and
Right.
those dogs may very well have been their children.
So you did parenting for each of them, basically,
a
back and
parenting
forth
plan
to
for
homes.
each one of them, how they get access, where was the key going to be left, what veterans' phone numbers and everything was available to them. Did I say veterans? I mean veterinarian, I'm sorry.
Veterinarians, yes.
And it's good to be a veteran and a veterinarian at the same time. I'm only one. So the point is that you make these decisions for them, and they almost always are willing to do anything because those dogs mean a lot to them. And
Especially when there's no kids. When there's no kids, the pets do mean a lot.
yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
I mean that's their babies. And sometimes also when you have kids, the kids want to be with the dogs. It's another additional
the
problem.
pets go with the kids, right?
Yeah, they try to go with the kids. Yeah, that's what kind of happens. Anything unusual happened to you in your course that's worthwhile mentioning? Any particular client that had an unusual story, a bartering system or something?
Well, I think one other story that comes to mind is we were mediating a couple, and every week we were talking, and the guy
That's
was
a team mediation.
The guy
you're
was
talking about you and
yeah, me and Dana were mediating, and the guy is sitting there like this every week. He's like, "Arr," and he's answering questions, but you could tell he's not really talking and all that. So the third weekend, we thought maybe the first session, was just new, it was that kind of thing. But then the third weekend, we said, Tom, we're, like, what's the situation? Like, why, is there something you want to, talk about? He started blasting her. And, we have to keep it a safe environment, right? It can't be like, one person can't feel like they're being overpowered. So we had to make sure it was kept at a minimum. But the 2 of them walked out together and started talking to each other, and left together, and were talking and walking together after he was able to get this stuff off of his chest.
On a couple of occasions, the couple had said during the session, especially the second, third, or fourth session, whatever, towards the end of the session, that, why didn't you tell me this before? Why are you only telling me this now? If you talked to me like this when we were together, right?
We would have stayed married.
So what happens is that there's, and this is, I don't know whether this is completely male, but it's definitely a male. One of the males' general nature of who they are is not such a willingness to share with their mate.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, I've seen that. I've seen it go the other way too. Don't get me wrong.
No,
but for the
majority, I think you're right. I see the same thing.
And it's usually the woman who says that. Why didn't you talk to me like that before?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely magic that happens, obviously, in mediation. I mean, that's why I call it magic, because
it is magic.
It's like miracles that happen like on a regular basis.
So we're going to say this out loud. You're going to hear him say this, and I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
Mediation is magic. Now, people are saying, "Oh, come on."
Yeah. What is this?
Where
are they going?
Oh my God, he's a mediator. What is he doing?
Right.
Truth is, it does happen. It's happened so often that now I can say it pronounced.
Right. Well, I do want to bring up something which I'm sure you have a story like this, but I think that a lot of the magic also happens out of litigation. Litigation basically, if they've gone through the courts.
Oh, you mean as a after effect?
Well, the thing is, like, they're divorcing through the courts, and then at some point they say, you know what, this is ridiculous. Let's try mediation.
Right.
And then they come to mediation, and then what happens is there's magic that happens. And what I mean by that is that the couple may not be talking to each other. They may not, they may have just worked on they're working on court procedures, and they're not actually working through the problems, right? Because I know you're aware of this, but it's like every time you go to court, it's about the next court date. It's about, did you do this? Did you do the deposition? Did you do this? Did you finish discovery? Like, the thing is with mediation, we're solving problems all the time. Like, we're immediately getting into the thick of it. Like, we don't wait. And that's why I say the magic part is because, the worst situation I had is where it was a couple that they were in litigation for 2 years, and in 3 sessions we had everything sorted out. 3 sessions. Right. They spent $80,000 in court. And now they came and spent $5,000 with us in 3 sessions.
That's right, yeah.
They're done, and we stipulated, and they were done.
I'll go you one better.
Go ahead.
My very first mediation was with Nassau County. A couple had been litigating.
We need to. There's somebody.
No, it's all right.
Okay. It's not going to be on the audio.
No, he's not getting you in that.
Okay.
He's all right.
All right.
So this couple had been litigating for 2 years. And the wife wouldn't let it go further. The wife was constantly disrupting the process, yelling in the court, dismissing her all the time. She just couldn't get it. She couldn't calm down. The judge was banging the gavel constantly. It was just a mess. They had spent $100,000 between them on the litigation for 2 years. It didn't get anywhere. So the judge says to me, just do what you can with them, because I can't get anywhere with them.
Okay.
I get them in the room, in this big room in Nassau County. I mean, I could barely see the end of the table. The two of them are sitting across the table. She starts doing the same thing that she did in court, ranting and raving. The guy's just sitting there. She's standing up. Her face is red. She's screaming more so than she probably did in court.
Right, she felt more comfortable.
Which mediators don't try to stop that from happening.
Right.
Although I was really worried about how long I could sustain all that yelling and stuff.
Yeah.
And she just kept it up and kept it up until she was fully exhausted. In 45 minutes, she signed the agreement. We're out the door, and they were divorced. Now, what did I do?
Nothing. You just let her vent.
But something did happen.
You let her vent.
I let her vent. I didn't know at the time. This is my first mediation. I was hoping she would go away.
Right.
But I was waiting for a shot, waiting for some time to talk. I couldn't figure out how I was going to get in the middle of this. And he says that she's ready to go before he knew. So look how ridiculous that is. 2 years, $100,000 spent, and she just needed to vent.
That's all she needed.
That's all she needed. I didn't know.
Right.
So I learned a big lesson, and that was the best lesson I think I've ever had.
Absolutely.
Don't say too much. Don't say anything if you don't have to. Let the process go.
Yeah.
And
well, it is important that people are heard. I think,
being heard. That's it.
Being heard, and then, and just in these sessions that we do, it's like every session is like, they're able to bring up the issues that they have, and they're able to get things off their chest. And in court, you really can't do that. They kind of shut them down, and they can't say things, and
The more that they can control, the more access to your interrogatories and money, whatever it is you fill out on the forms, can be available to them. That's the way I always looked at it.
Yeah.
So to settle, let's go towards the kids a little bit. The amount of dysfunction, statistically, from doing the research for years on this topic, I used to research for mediation before I became a mediator. That's what got me interested in it, doing the research for other states.
Right.
So we know that the divorces were happening quicker when they were in mediation. They weren't lasting as long, and the amount of money being spent was averaged out at $13,000, I think, per couple.
Yeah.
Okay. This was a survey. I don't remember the name of the survey, but it was a national survey. In New York, you can't even get to your second date in court without passing that off, and you haven't had a decision happen to you. But the kids are part of this, and they're not seen in court. In mediation, I don't know if you've ever done this, but you can actually have the kid, if need be, come to the mediation process, or possibly a grandparent who's had a tremendous relationship with one of the kids.
Sure.
A stepmother, a stepfather who has a better relationship with the kid than maybe one of the biological mother or the biological father.
Absolutely.
So what does that mean in mediation?
Yeah.
Bring them in.
Right.
Let's
It's more communication.
If this is what you want to do, it's not only the amount of communication; it's the quality of the relationship that the kids have with that particular person. It could be a neighbor.
There's a lot of different facets to that, and you know, you're touching on the fact that the kid has a relationship with multiple people, and it's important to bring those people in.
Right.
But it's also the process. What I was thinking while you were talking is also while the litigation process is going on, the kids are also brought through that litigation process. So instead of it being a nice situation where you're sitting in a room and you're trying to resolve issues, it's now a bloody battle in court where everybody's fighting everybody, and the kids are being like used as pawns back and forth. And I think that's a huge component, right? For me, that's what's so much better. I mean, you know, the thing that we always tell people is that post-divorce is so much better from mediation than it is from litigation.
Right.
Forget about the process itself. Yes, the process is great, but post-divorce, there's more compliance with the agreements because they're both agreeing, so there's more compliance, and they can heal. They can heal quicker. Like from a mental health perspective, they can heal emotionally and mentally a lot quicker after a mediation.
Well, they've heard each other, they've communicated, and I think it's all part of that, to me, what is the self-determination process, the aspect of self-determining something.
Right.
Is you bring what you want into a conversation with somebody who, although you're separating from, you recognize you have to come to some kind of conclusion, some kind of resolution to an issue.
Right.
And that other person is very necessary for that to happen.
Yeah,
So
it is.
mediation, excuse me, facilitates that conversation to make it work.
Absolutely.
Whereas you don't get that same opportunity
You
in
don't.
court.
And you also don't get the opportunity to stay for both parties to be accountable to the failure of the marriage. I mean, how important it is that one person doesn't say, well, it's his fault. You know,
right.
he did this, it's his fault. No, it's not his fault. Marriage is from two people. And the thing is like helping both of them understand that they're both accountable to the failure of the marriage also helps in the healing and helps in the post-divorce.
And what also helps the healing is the kids get the opportunity to see their parents negotiate without killing each other. So they get to see, when they've come home from a mediation, the entire different atmosphere in their
Absolutely.
Right? When they come back from a court, who knows what they're going to be happy,
You're
how
absolutely
angry
right.
they can be. They
I mean, they're
come
doing
home
more and more
peaceful.
mediation in schools nowadays, which I
right.
think is great. It's
The kids will benefit.
kids will benefit
by the mediation, is unequivocal.
without a doubt. I agree.
Without a doubt, it goes
Yep.
forward. Thanks very much, son. I appreciate that. You've been watching FIT TV, the program that brings you behind the scene of our divorce culture. At FIT, you know you cannot get this information on your own, so we'll bring it to your TV every single week. And of course, we always invite all opposing views, and I don't think there will be any opposing views from me and you, Don. Thank you very much for watching FIT TV, and we'll see you again next week.